kickoff feature for Healthy Family Palm Beach, I have the great honor to introduce our spotlight guest, Dr. Bawa. Dr. Bawa, wow, there is so much to set the stage for with your background. As a doctor running through the halls of the emergency room in the Cleveland Clinic to helping people around the world with their sexual health as the Dr. Sex Fairy, and also Miss Florida, the title of Miss Florida, and then courageously going through chemotherapy. But to get started, how did you initially get involved in ER medicine?
Thank you for having me. That was a wonderful introduction. I love emergency medicine. I love everything about it. The fact that you see so many different things, the fact that you never know what lies ahead. There is a sense of excitement, of thrill. I used to fly the helicopter, the trauma helicopter, and pick up patients from trauma scenes. It was lovely. I loved every bit of it. But what I didn't like about emergency medicine as much as you might think is the fact that I was always reacting to disease and doing nothing to prevent it. I hated that fact. I wanted to do more to preserve health, to maintain health, and not so much to always be fighting illness. So my practice, Bawa Medical, grew out of that concept. It is a labor of love, not to mention the fact that in the ER, you know that show Sex Sent Me to the ER? Every bit of that is true. It does happen. In the emergency room, you see people having many sexual and intimate wellness type emergencies. You know, whether it's a vibrator in somebody's bottom that's still vibrating when they come to the ER that they lost. Or sometimes men would come in saying, I can't get an erection. And I would initially wonder, what part of emergency room did they miss? This is not an emergency. But then this happened often enough. And I started to think, maybe there's a gap in our healthcare system. Maybe there is a reason why these poor people are feeling the need to come to the emergency room for something so intimate. They are not getting what they need from their own doctors. And that's really how Dr. Sex Fairy began.
So when someone comes to you and they are looking to grow their intimacy with their partner, is it because that they have an issue in particular, or is it that they're looking to actually enhance their sexual relationship with their partner?
That is an excellent question. I see every bit of that because, as very few people realize, 20% of men, even in their 20s, suffer from some form of erectile dysfunction. Everybody thinks that this only happens middle age onwards, but that's not true. Far from it. 30% of men in their 30s, 40% of men in their 40s. This goes up about 10% for every decade of life. And as long as we're living in today's times, 80s, 90s, some of us are 100 years old, there's no reason why we should stop having sex. Yet, the more we live, the less chance we have of having good sex. So I see people who are having issues with it, and I also see people who simply want to have a better time of it. Both.
You know, it's interesting when you look at the whole scope of health. We think about heart health, we think about, the physical health, but to bring the conversation of sexual health to the forefront as if it's the elephant in the room that people aren't really talking about. So how do people find you? How is it that people start asking those questions or asking better questions so that they end up here with a visit with you?
Again, a great question. You see, the thing is that people are looking online for information. I have a lot of information out there on the internet that I'm putting out. I have a YouTube channel. I have a very active Instagram page. In fact, I have a few of those. Instagram account, I guess I should call it, not a page. Facebook has a page. What can I say? But I have all this social media out there, and people are finding me different ways. They are looking for help. They are crying out for help. And then they find my videos out there. They might find a blog by me out there. And then they contact my practice. I have people flying in from Italy, from Haiti, from Canada, from all over Europe for my care now.
I want to switch gears with you for a second. And I want to move into that you had a diagnosis this past year or so. Can you talk a little bit about that and courageously going through chemotherapy while being a mom of two wonderful twin boys and running a busy medical practice?
Oh my goodness, where does one even start? It is unfortunate, but I'm very glad you're asking this question as well, because I want people to know that I got misdiagnosed for almost 3 years before I was finally diagnosed with breast cancer. I first found that lump almost 3 years prior to being diagnosed. I went to my gynecologist for my yearly physical. I told him. He insisted that he did not feel a lump. I had to argue back that I felt it and that I wanted a mammogram. And he argued back saying that I did not qualify for one because I was under 40. I could not understand where he was coming from. I had done everything right. I had done self-exams. I had found that lump, that dreaded lump that we women never want to find. And he was denying me a mammogram. So I had to argue and fight for it. He did order it for me, and they did see the lump on the mammogram. They then got an ultrasound, but they did not want to biopsy me. They said it looked benign. They asked me to come back for another mammogram in 6 months. They did that again, told me it looked benign. And then a year after that, I insisted on a biopsy, and that's when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Except now I didn't have just one small little nodule. I had multiple growths, and they were large. So what could have been a little lumpectomy ended up being a mastectomy. I ended up with nerve damage. I ended up with so many issues, things that should never have happened. I did everything right, but I was not given the care I should have had. So cancer misdiagnosis is a real issue. I went through chemotherapy. I was told I would need radiation. It was something that shook my world. I'm a single mother of 2 small boys. They're 11 years old, the love of my life. And their biggest question was, will you die? And I don't think we should have been put in that situation. I think that my doctors should have been more proactive, especially because I was being proactive for my health. And that is why you may ask, everybody says this happens for a reason. And sometimes it gets annoying almost, because here you are suffering through the worst trauma of your life, really. And everybody keeps telling you to find something positive out of it. In my case, I did find something positive out of it. I decided that I was going to change breast cancer as we know it. I was going to do something very radically different. For instance, when I told my near and dear friends that I was diagnosed with breast cancer, the first thing they told me is to gracefully shave my hair. Now, as somebody who has suffered from hair loss my whole life, and somebody who ended up having a hair transplant, and now, here I am, and I do hair restoration in my own practice. That's a big part of what I do, not just the sexual wellness. So I said, that makes no sense to me at all. Why do you assume that somebody with cancer is going to go bald? And they said, well, because everyone does. And I said, that's quite an assumption. So that was one thing that I thought about. The other thing is, everybody told me that I had to accept that with cancer, I was going to look different. And that is, again, something I disagreed with. So, of all the things I could have possibly done, I joined a beauty pageant. Never having joined a beauty pageant before, wasn't a pageant girl, just wasn't my thing. I was a Cleveland Clinic trained doctor. I went to medical school. I didn't do that. But I decided that I was going to show people that cancer can be beautiful. And I signed up for Miss Florida the night my oncologist told me that I would need at least 16 rounds of chemotherapy, very strong chemotherapy because my cancer was aggressive, as well as possibly 40 rounds of radiation. Something just told me that this is not how my story was going to end. I was going to inspire.
Your story, I have goosebumps with your story, and the message that you are sharing to women to courageously step into their power. I love that you did that. So that idea, you said, I am going to sign up for a pageant, I'm going to run in this pageant, I'm going to have my chemotherapy. So you were doing the chemotherapy treatment while you were preparing for the pageant?
Well, actually, I did not prepare for the pageant. I wore my own clothes. All I did was buy a gown for stage because of chemotherapy, I had gained weight. So I couldn't fit into my own gown, so I bought a gown, but otherwise I did nothing to prepare for it. I certainly was too sick to do anything. I couldn't go to the gym. I was too sick to work out. I certainly couldn't go to a gym with lots of people in it. I had no immunity. So I did nothing to prepare for it. I just showed up, and that was that. But yes, I went through the worst of chemotherapy right before I went on stage. In fact, I had a mastectomy a month before I walked onto stage that day. So it's an interesting story. I defied many of the expectations of what a pageant winner does. When I won my pageant, I was not somebody anybody would associate with a pageant, and I certainly didn't do anything that the normal pageant winner does to win.
Where would you say that you get your courage and your strength?
I come from a family rooted in the military and academia. I come from a family that is all about strength. I am Sikh, and that's my religion. We are called the saint soldiers in India. We live a saintly, holy life, but we are very proactive about standing up for ourselves. There's a lot of courage. We stand up for those that cannot stand up for themselves, that sort of thing. So I grew up being told by my parents that strength was going to be my way. And when this happened, strength was still my way. I was defiant in the face of cancer.
So you are in the midst of your treatment right now.
I am. I am technically cancer-free, but the struggle is far from over. I still have more surgeries ahead. I do have nerve damage from my treatment, and it's not over yet. No.
Well, I look at you as a beautiful woman. You have beautiful skin and beautiful hair. And so what is it that you have done? You can see your positive attitude and your strength, but then so physically you look so radiant, and your attitude and your strength and your courage. And so has there been something in particular that you have done really to help yourself along the way with self-care and self-love in your routine?
I have managed to save my skin and my hair because of my practice. As I mentioned, Bawa Medical is a labor of love. This practice saved me. I did not want to lose my hair. I'd struggled with hair loss my entire life. And when cancer happened, hair loss was a real concern. I managed to, with my own treatments, save my hair. I also didn't want to lose my skin. So much of cancer and chemotherapy affects skin. My skin treatments in my office, my own skincare line, ended up being my savior. So while I have just about finished chemotherapy a few months ago, I just about had a mastectomy and have gone through such a traumatic ordeal with an aggressive cancer, I don't look like it.
You've been called the Rejuvenation Queen in the media. So how is that?
I have been called Rejuvenation Queen because I do rejuvenation as a whole, from the top of your head to the tips of your toes. I rejuvenate my patients. I have a very simple philosophy. Anybody who walks into Bawa Medical leaves better. It doesn't matter what they come in for, they will leave better. I don't care if it is hair restoration. Clearly, I understand hair restoration because I went from hair loss to this hair despite chemotherapy. I have this skin despite chemotherapy. And of course, sexual wellness is a major area of focus in my practice because sexual dysfunction is so underrated. People don't talk about it. People don't feel comfortable discussing it with their doctors. And often when they do discuss it with their doctors, they are dismissed. So this is a silent pandemic all its own. And that's where I have come into this with rejuvenation. I help people go back in time. I help people to the point that they didn't even realize it could be this great, whether it's their hair, their skin, and certainly, action in the bedroom. That's what made me Dr. Sex Fairy.
As an empowered woman and the different types of treatments that you offer for rejuvenation, I want to ask you on the female side and on the male side, what kind of treatments do you offer?
Oh my goodness, that is a tough question to answer. For women, I do everything rejuvenation when it comes to vaginal rejuvenation. Vaginal tightening, taking women back to a pre-childbirth state. Lubrication, women lose that with age. In fact, even young women can lose that with hormonal fluctuations. I help them with that. I help women get more orgasmic. So there is a lot of fun happening here at Bawa Medical. We're making dreams come true. With men, we help them with, of course, erectile issues. We help men who don't even have erectile issues prevent erectile issues, because remember, I'm all about preservation, not just reacting to illness, but preventing it. So we help men have the erections of their dreams. We also help with penis enlargement. I am one of the few practices in the world that can actually do penis enlargement, and I don't do it surgically. That makes me very unique, and that is why people are flying to me from around the world for it.
I know there are a lot of viewers and listeners that have more questions, and you have a podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, I love my podcast. It is so wonderful. It is so much fun, so informative. It's called Dr. Sex Fairy. Of course, the podcast came about because people around the world have questions. They email my practice all the time. Some do fly to us, some cannot fly to us. So how do I get the word out about intimate wellness? Because remember, it's not just about having great sex. I mean, that's wonderful, of course, but intimate wellness. It's about women who want to go to the park and jump on a trampoline maybe and exercise and not dribble all over themselves and not embarrass themselves. It's about men who, want to have just confidence in the boardroom, not just the bedroom. And that's really where Dr. Sex Fairy, the podcast, came in. I help people realize their options. Many of them don't even realize what treasure trove of treatments are available now. The things that I do at my practice, it's really state of the art, revolutionary in many ways. So my podcast is something that spreads the word. It's funny, it's respectful, there's nothing cheap or lurid about it. And I ask the questions and give answers about things that we all want to know, but are sometimes too embarrassed to ask. So it's a wonderful new venture of mine. Yes.
Absolutely. You're going to help so many men and women in the bedroom and also in their lives.
Yes.
And so to tie everything that we talked about here together, stepping into your courage, going through chemotherapy, going and entering into a pageant and actually winning the pageant as Miss Florida, what would be your parting words to someone listening today?
I would tell somebody listening today to never sell themselves short. Whether it's cancer or adversity in general, because we all face adversity of some kind in our lives, don't give up. Don't think for a second that adversity means that your life is over, that joy ends, that goals and dreams end. Cancer is something that happened to me, but I never let cancer define me. I was defiant. I decided that cancer was going to build my life in ways that I had not been able to thus far. So, cancer meant that I became an American Cancer Society ambassador. I decided to fundraise for cancer research, because if it wasn't for cancer research, I would not be alive today. My boys would not have a mother today. So, adversity is not something that one should get bogged down with. Adversity should help us grow. I think if nothing else, people should learn that from my life. And of course, get a second opinion with your doctor. Don't always trust your doctor. We don't always know what we're doing, right? Based on my own experience, 3 years being misdiagnosed, can you imagine? I'm not alive thanks to my doctors, I'm alive in spite of them. And if it wasn't for my oncologist at Sylvester, my goodness, where would I be today?
Wonderful, powerful. Thank you so much for being part of Healthy Family Palm Beach today and for inspiring so many people, me included.
Thank you so much for having me.